So, good morning everyone. Welcome to our special pensions meeting. The agendas grew a little since we first set up this meeting, but I appreciate everyone's time at this busy time of the year when everyone's tending to try and tie up as much their work as possible to get a wee bit of a break. So I appreciate your time this morning, and given the marathon of a day that the Falkirk councillors and officers had yesterday. So thank you and good morning once more. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. Apologies.
Yes, convener, we have apologies from George Murphy, Ed Morrison, Simon Hunt and David Wilson.
That's great. Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, I got a wee email there from Simon saying that he's had a bit of an emergency this morning, so he's not been able to make it, but he has forwarded some of his comments on the agenda. So I appreciate that, and thanks Simon for his sterling work over the last year in the pension committee. Declarations of interest. Any declarations? No, that's great. Moving on to agenda item 3, and I believe Graham, you're going to take that for us. Thanks, Graham.
Yep. Thank you. The first of 2 internal audit papers today is our annual assurance report for 2020 to 21. And the main purpose of the report is to provide members of the committee and the board with an overall opinion on the adequacy of the pension funds arrangements for risk management, governance and control based on the work that we undertook over the course of financial year 2020 to 21. And as well as that, the report also comments on our compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. Members might recall that when approving the internal audit plan back at the August 2020 meeting, we highlighted that it must be considered within the context and the impact of the pandemic, and recognise that the pension team's priorities, resources and capacity were going to fluctuate and change over the course of the year. And because of this, the plan focused on providing assurance on key internal control areas. So just a couple of key points to highlight from the report itself. Firstly, and most importantly, as you can see from paragraph 2.1, we've concluded that we're able to provide substantial assurance on the fund's overall control framework. That's consistent with previous years, and it's based on 2 audit assignments that we undertook over the course of the year, and these were on pensions transactional testing and operational cash management arrangements. The findings arising from both of these reviews are summarised at section 4. In relation to the transactional testing work, we found that the controls were working well, working effectively, and on that basis we provided substantial assurance. And there's a wee bit more information on the work just at paragraphs 4.3 to 4.5 of the report. On operational cash management, we were content that the pension team are complying with the requirements of the policy, of the cash management policy, and our testing of a sample of transactions again confirmed that appropriate segregation of duties were in place and that the transactions were being approved correctly. And we made one recommendation to review investment limits, and that recommendation has already been limited, but been implemented, I should say. And again, I think you'll recall maybe from your March 18 meeting, it was included in the governance update report to that, and it's also included in the annual governance statement, which is part of agenda item 5 at today's meeting. Section 5 comments on internal audit sections compliance with the public sector internal audit standards, and based on a self-assessment that was undertook by the internal audit manager in February 2021, we're content that we remain broadly compliant with those. And finally, I just ask members and the board to note the recommendations at section 2, and happy to try and answer any questions that you've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Has anyone got any questions?
Convener.
John?
Thank you, Convener. Just something to ask Graham, under 4.4, the basis of testing the sample of 47 transactions, in view of the size of our scheme and the activity of the scheme, is 47 a reasonable sample?
Yeah, I think so. Like what we tend to do is we pick the sample, and if we find any issues in particular areas, we would dive down a wee bit deeper into that particular area. So within that 47, we'll look at areas like new members, pension payments, transfers in, transfers out, refunds, deceased members and deferred pensions. And to be honest, for a lot of those categories, there's not a lot of activity. So transfers in, for example, we've probably picked, although we've only picked 3 in relative terms, that's probably quite a big sample. But as I say, we do pick our sample, and then if we find anything in one particular area, then we would look at it in a wee bit more detail.
Thank you, Graham.
Anyone else with any questions? No?
No.
Happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to agenda item 4, and that's our internal audit plan for 21-22. And Graham, you're going to speak again, please. Thanks.
Thank you. So the last paper was obviously, I guess, looking back, and this paper is now looking forward to what we're going to do during the current year. So this paper proposes an internal audit plan for 2021 to 2022, and you'll see that there's 3 areas that we've agreed with the pension manager that we'll look at. The first of those is paragraph 4.1, and it's the transactional testing that we've just sort of spoken about. So as I say, it'll be that similar approach where we pick a sample of transactions in each of the areas and just follow it through to support and documentation. Paragraph 4.2 will undertake a review of the internal and external assurances that the pension manager receives on the fund's cyber security arrangements. And that obviously links into areas like the pension fund risk register and the increase in the risk that's been recognised there. Paragraph 4.3 will review and provide input to the project plan for the proposed fund manager. The final 3 paragraphs of the report, that's paragraphs 4.4 to 4.6, set out some background on the audit process, and it includes a commitment to bring a progress report to any future meetings of the committee and the board over the course of the year as our work progresses. And I just finished by asking members of the committee and the board to note the recommendations at paragraph 2.1, and if you're minded to approve the internal audit plan for the coming year. And again, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, I'm glad we're acting upon the cyber issue, because obviously we have some of your members have had extreme effects of that. Has anyone else got any questions? No?
No.
Happy to agree the report?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, and that's our annual report. Debbie?
Good morning, everyone. So yes, I'm here to talk about the annual report and accounts for 2021. As you will see, as usual, it is a weighty tome, as require all the requirements that we need to include in the pension fund accounts. So I have to start first off by thanking Justina and Alistair for the power of work that they've put into these accounts in getting all the information, getting it laid out in the right format, etc. And they've had a huge amount of effort gone into doing that. So I'm really grateful to Justina in particular, but also to Alistair, because he'd contributed a large amount to the process as well. So thank you to you both. We've had a couple of comments from Ed and Simon today about how impressive they are. So I think that hopefully reflects the feeling of what needs to go into these and what is presented in front of you today. So thank you for that. Just to kind of pick up on some key points, if you like. There's no massive changes to the kind of layout or what's required by SIPFA this year with regard to the layout. We have made some changes to make the text accessible, the text font size accessible, so that probably makes them slightly longer than they were previously because it was a smaller text size. I think you're flowing through the management commentary and Adana and Simon's forwards flows the experience of COVID that the pension team and the pension fund have been through, and I think as I noted at previous meetings, we've managed to pay all the pensions on time and do the vast majority of our work as required, which in some cases is different from other funds, but we've managed to keep answering telephone calls, doing transfers in and out, etc. And also the ESG theme that obviously is high on everybody's agenda at the moment. So just there's details of what we've been doing through that, and hopefully you recognise these from previous meetings. Taking me next as the accountant part in me takes me to the numbers. So maybe just you're looking at some of the details in the key points in section 5 of the report on page 16 of your papers. There's some key points and key metrics. Obviously, we've talked at the investment strategy training, etc., about funding levels and the differences between reported fundings and investment strategy. But just we get an updated, in between valuations, we do get an updated valuation from the actuary, and that showed at the 31st of March, although it may have changed by now to something different. It showed 106% funding. So I think that's reflecting on the bounce back mainly of all of the asset values compared to those at 31/3/20 when we did the triennial valuation. So as noted in the investment training, we keep an eye on that and see how that pans out over the coming months and years in between the valuation. On the investment return side, you'll see it's been a very positive year with a bounce back, as we say, of the equities in particular. Cash flow wise, we're looking at being very broadly similar. We did have a transfer out to Visit Scotland, and that kind of accounts for the fact that our net income looks like it's down, but if you actually take that transfer out, it would be back to kind of normal rates. So the maturity of the fund stays broadly the same. I don't think there's a huge amount to say on the contribution front. On the cost front, the admin costs were within budget and slightly increased due to sorts of projects like scanning and GMP, and the scanning project continues into this financial year as well. I'm pleased to say that it's well underway, and we've got rid of a lot of paper records. Still a few more to go, but we're well on our way with that. Oversight and governance costs are again within budget, and there's a bit of a flick between the investment costs in here and the ones in the direct investment costs below, but overall we're seeing the benefits of working collaboratively with Lothian and an overall cost base on the investment side of things. And obviously there's then the annual governance statement as well at the back of the accounts, with the details of internal control, and obviously through the report there's also details of the risk and risk register, which we talked about at the last meeting. So aware that it is a weighty tome, and there's plenty of things. We try to summarise it very quickly, and there's plenty of things to discuss and talk about. But just aware that if anybody's got any questions under 2.1 asked to consider, and any comments, I'd be happy to take those now.
Thank you, Debbie. Just before we move on to questions, I too would like to extend my thanks to yourself and the whole team that have been involved. As everyone can see, this is a lengthy document, and there's a lot of information went into it, and it takes quite some time and effort to draw all together. So I appreciate all the efforts that has been put into this. So thank you, Debbie, and thanks to your team.
Thank you.
Questions?
Could I echo Adana's sentiments on behalf of the board, please?
Thank you, Tony.
Councillor Blackwood.
Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener. Just a quick question, page 50, the management fees, and I see we have a reduction of 561,000 over the year. Is that attributed to the fact that we use the Lothian in-house investment team for some of our investments, or is there another reason for it?
These fees are based on what we expect assets under management to be at the time, and obviously it depends on what level the markets are at and what size the assets under management are. So I think the most part of that is the fact that it's a percentage of assets under management, and perhaps the level wasn't quite what we'd expected at the time. Justina, I don't know if that's anything you want to jump in on that one.
We're doing our best estimates when we are setting the budget for the fees, but as what just following from what Debbie has said, they do depend on the market value. So depending on the market value, the fees may go up or down. We had in Q2 2020, the fees may not have recovered. The valuation may not have recovered up to the same level as just now. So we had experienced a little bit lower fees for Q2 2020, and the fees from Q3 just increased due to the market valuations.
Okay, thank you.
Has anyone got any other questions? See Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Convener. I could have leaned out the window to do that, I just remembered. I don't know if this question is pertinent to this report or to the private report. It's concerning the future location and position of our staff. I'll take your advice on that one, Convener.
Is it included in this report? If it's a private matter, then I'd appreciate if we left it to the last
Well,
item on the agenda.
It might be safer to, I think. So I have a further question. So if Falkirk Community Trust is obviously a participant in the pension fund, I take it when the staff have TUPE conditions, pension rights transfer automatically? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the entirety, yeah.
Yeah, so when they cease to be at the end of March 2022, they will move straight over to be part of Falkirk Council, and their pension rights won't be affected, or won't be changed, should I say?
Yes, I think we're all affected but not changed. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Has anyone else got any questions on the annual report?
No.
Oh, there's Andy Douglas.
Yeah, sorry, it's not to do with the report. I was just interested in what Councillor Reid had said there. With people that are outside the Falkirk Council, of course, we're not sure about the inner workings or whatever, but am I gathering from there that the trust is ceasing to happen and people are coming back in-house to work?
Yeah, Andy, Falkirk, we've been doing quite a bit of work over the last year, and it was agreed at council quite some time ago that the trust would be disbanded and being brought back in-house.
All right.
And there is quite a few documents. They're probably public, so you'll be able to see the documents,
okay.
the reports that have
Very
gone forward.
interesting. Very interesting. I see that's happening in quite a few areas, of course.
Yep.
But yeah.
I believe Clackmannan are looking into it as well at the minute.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Stirling has a different model, obviously, from Falkirk.
Yeah, we only have a couple of things that's in trust, but yeah. Okay, all right. Thanks very much.
It might help to mention, Andy, it was not a unanimous decision.
Yeah, it was, but it
democracy.
wasn't fact.
That's democracy for you. Moving on, has anyone got any other questions on the report? No? Happy to recommend the condition, the recommendations? Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Debbie, once again.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6. That's the merger report, and I believe Brian's going to take that. Thanks, Brian.
Sorry, Convener, just to be really pedantic, sorry, Brian. Item
Oh.
6 is the exclusion, so you have to formally agree to exclude the public.
I always forget that, and I'm so glad that somebody always jumps in just in time.
Right.
But
I knew
yeah,
Brian would, but I just got that.
to the fact that it's a private agreement, then we exclude the public, so this part of the meeting will not be getting recorded.